So welcome to today's AMA from Ocavu Studios. Live, do not adjust your televisions. I am not John Chaney. I am Jeremy Whitt, guest hosting for John Chaney, who is out on leave. We'll be back in the bi-weekly AMAs for you in 2 weeks. Co-hosting with me today is Sturgis Adams. Sturgis, give us the one-sentence overview of who you are.
Hello. So I'm many things, but today I lead metaverse strategy for Ocavu, and I'm super pleased to be here alongside our chief strategy officer.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks so much, Sturgis. Always enlightening and engaging. Brilliance comes from Sturgis at almost every turn. Just to start out, today's AMA is Web3 for lifestyle brands. We're going to go in reverse order of those words. Brands. Sturgis, what's a brand? Oh, he's on mute.
Oops, sorry. What's the brand?
No, what's a brand?
What's a brand? Oh, man, we're starting there, huh?
Yeah.
Well, a brand is a nice representation of the values that we get reflected by a company.
Yep. Definitely all good. I am taking the liberties of using Google.
Please. Yeah. What's a better definition?
Not necessarily better, but the most popular definition of brand is name, term, design, or any other feature that distinguishes one product and service from another, or a unique identifier. Unique identifier, unique. That might come up in the future. So Sturgis, if that's a brand, what is a brand experience?
Well, something that we get to go through as a user that can be either a real life or digital version of the values that are reflected in that brand, right?
Excellent. Yep. Good stuff. Again, completely cheating. Most popular answer on Google is the sum of all sensations, feelings, cognitions, and behavioral responses. Evoked.
Yeah, I was going to say my second part of that sentence, not to interrupt you, would be like, I think that goal, the important part of that, right, in any brand experience is to leave you with something, a lasting impression. Really, what we're talking about, from my angle, when we make these kinds of things, is like, let's try to make people feel something,
Yeah.
Stories are helpful doing that.
Yeah, love it. I actually liked the most popular answer, and only because of one word, and that was the feeling. Some of all sensations, feelings, cognitions, behavior responses. It was the feelings part, right? When I'm coaching brand experience, I always talk about feelings. How do you want to make people feel? That's your brand essence, brand experience.
Yeah, because that's what they're going to remember.
Of course, it's the feelings. How do you feel? All of you in therapy know the difference between adjectives and feelings. But anyway, I digress. So if a brand is the unique identifier and the brand experience is how people feel, then what is a lifestyle brand? Sturgis.
Well, a lifestyle brand is something that would reflect the parts of your life that the brand connects to, right? I'm not sure if that's a bit of a flub, but yeah, that's how I think about them.
It's great. It's great. Most popular answer on Google is embody the values, aspiration, interests, attitudes, or opinions, a group or a culture for marketing purposes.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Very important. Lifestyle brands do have a motive. They do want to promote the brand, but I like the word holistic. It's a holistic embodiment of that brand, and that creates this lifestyle. So what are some great lifestyle brands? Probably the archetype, the gold standard. I say that because none other than I believe it was a Harvard seminar that talked about lifestyle brand. We're talking about Patagonia.
Oh, yeah. Great example in the media today, right? Doing the ultimate lifestyle move.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for those of you who aren't paying attention on the video, those of you on the audio only. We're now joined by B Global CEO and co-founder Sam Bretsfield.
There he is.
Hey. Thanks for
expert in
having
the
me,
Web3
Jeremy.
space, expert in the Web3 space, as well as a number of technology and business competencies across the board. He will be peppering us with intriguing and provocative questions later in the program. So without further ado, lifestyle brands. What are some examples? We talked about Patagonia, the archetype. Why is Patagonia so strong? Sturgis, in your opinion, knowing so much about brands and especially Patagonia. Also, may we don't forget what happened last week. Patagonia being one of the first companies to be given away in the spirit of lifestyle branding. How about that, Sturgis? Talk to us.
You mean the actual event that occurred,
Yeah.
or why they're so great? So, well, both, I would say. I mean, they're pretty connected, right? But I think the thing that happened, to back into it, is the CEO and founder gave away his entire company to fund environmental initiatives, which is really, again, back to the earlier definition of what a brand is very reflective of their value and belief system. And I mean, Patagonia in particular is one of my favorite brands because they really do walk the walk, right? It's hard to find a brand out there in the world that people are as obsessed with. Maybe the Apple, Nike, a couple of other good examples of this space. But the obsession with the elements of the brand that matter to people, that really make them feel something, is the reason that it's become, I think, certainly fashion's favorite outdoor brand, right? Yep. And it's because I think it's truly inseparable from its values. Every single move they make in the market is connected to the things that they attest to care about. And it's powered and made evangelists out of everyone who's ever worn the label. And that's an excellent
they came up with what could be nothing short of blasphemy in the marketing community a few years ago with their command, "Don't buy our products." Now, why did they do that? Why would a retail company come out with a program, "Don't buy our products"? What they were actually saying is, live our products. Don't buy them. Don't buy them because Sturgis bought them and Sturgis is cool. Don't buy them because I want to collect Patagonia brands because it matches my decor. Don't buy them because Patagonia represents something I want to be associated with that purely by commerce transactions. The campaign, "Don't buy my products, don't buy our products," was, of course, stop the commercialization and focus on the lifestyle. And they have embodied, they are the lifestyle brand of lifestyle brands.
Yeah, that's right. 100%.
They are so fantastically good at doing it. And what is the ultimate? It's authenticity. They are authentic about their lifestyle brand. The number 2 lifestyle brand that is taught in probably every business and marketing college course, self-help, whatever, is, of course, Red Bull. Red Bull gives you wings. What's the lifestyle of a Red Bull brand enthusiast, brand ambassador, and brand influencer? Well, of course, it's extreme sports. It's doing things extraordinary. It's excitement. It's being alive. It's challenging your fears. It's everything along those lines, perhaps type A, perhaps ambitious, perhaps conquering challenges and your deepest dark fears, all of which create just an enormously rich brand experience. We talked about that. And if you live that, then you are living the Red Bull lifestyle brand, one of my favorite brands of all time. I have been a Red Bull lifestyle brand enthusiast since their march into the Western Hemisphere almost 25 years ago. And they are such a brilliant example. Other examples abound, from Louis Vuitton to one of my favorites, actually, is Airstream, the most unassuming
Oh,
but
great example. Yeah.
lifestyle brand, bringing the caravan to the community, whatever their little campaign was there a few years back. Nike, probably the largest of all footprints of the lifestyle brands. Nike Just Do It, Sports Embodiment, and there's various others. I think Jessica Alba has something called Honest Brands or something like that. Certainly,
yeah, brilliant brand, brilliant.
All of which. So what's the difference between a great lifestyle brand and a great brand?
That's a good question.
So great brands that are probably not lifestyle brands. Sturgis, you and I talked about Lego. Coca-Cola might be another one.
Yeah.
There's not a Coca-Cola lifestyle brand. Look at the definition of lifestyle brand: values, aspirations, interests, attitudes, and opinions of a group or culture. What is the attitude and the interests and the values? Well, the values is probably a good one, but the attitudes and opinions and culture of Coca-Cola. Well, it doesn't have any. They're one of their taglines. I wish she would give us 5 of them, as well as the entire 150-year history of the tagline at Coke. One of the strongest brands on the planet, if not the strongest brand. I think it's number 2 only to the Olympics. Coca-Cola is not as much of a lifestyle as it is a brand. And so there is potentially a nuanced difference along the lines. Those of you who disagree, please write in the comments or submit your AMA. But that's what we're going with for now. So
right. And I would say too, like, just to launch you into this, and maybe I'm leading the witness a little bit, I have been known, but one of the incredible things that is happening to non-lifestyle brands, and has been happening much to their dismay, is because of the challenge or sort of I think thing they miss as the internet evolves, as culture evolves, is the need to understand content versus context, right? Like, and how for us, AR and certainly Web3 does an incredible job of delivering content in context. And of course, like, the question is how social media nurtured and in some ways forced non-lifestyle brands to really get into the content game, right? And that starts to be something that I think, I don't know, I love listening to Jeremy talk about those transitions between Web 2 and Web 3. So I'll be quiet, and hopefully that helps you launch into it.
Great lead in. So Web 3 for lifestyle brands, that presumes an understanding of Web 1 and Web 2. And as Sturgis mentioned, an infinite number of versions of Web 2 to Web 3 permutations. Let's very quickly review. Web 1 is the read-only web, one way. Kind of like broadcast television, you can't talk back to your television with any type of response or meaningfulness. One-way communication. Web 1 was web pages. To a certain extent, email is one way. And people say, well, you can reply, but that reply, one-way communication as well. The information that gets sent out can't be modified in any meaningful way. So Web 1 was the read-only web. Web 2. So what was Web 2? Well, and by the way, Web 1 was, of course, epitomized by websites or brochureware or online brochures. Web 2 is, of course, the read and write web, two-way. E-commerce, social media, and business apps, those epitomize Web 2. So what is Web 3? Well, Web3 has many definitions. I like to go with the early definitions as well as the most authoritative, W3C, et cetera, et cetera. Web3 is the read, write, and execute web. So that's kind of a techie definition. If you're a Linux person, it's RWX. But if you're a scientist and not a techie, you're going to call it the semantic web. Well, what does semantic means? Well, all I know, most people are going to say, well, all I know is that snooty, smart people say, well, that's just semantics. It still doesn't help me. What's semantic web mean? Well, semantic web means comprehensible syntax that can be understood. That's, semantics. And so the semantic web means that machines can read it, machines can understand it. So when you're talking about technology data, there's different types of things. You have structured and unstructured data. So what's an example of each? Well, I'll give you a really good example. An unstructured definition of my address is drive a mile. You'll see a building on the left, turn left on that road. And at the end of that road, there's a fork in the road. Take the right turn. And when you see the blue car that's parked in front of my house, turn left into the driveway. There's absolutely no structure to that address, but it is very much an address. It's very specific information that tells me how to get to my house. The more structured way of doing that is to say that my house is, 1004 Wall Street, New York, 10005. That is a very structured way. That is semantic. Why? Well, because there's a specification that says street number, street, city, state, and zip code. Well, that is what Web3 brings to the web. It brings semantics. What does that bring? That allows, in a trustless environment, machines to talk to machines without human intervention, without me getting information from my email and then typing it into a website. There's not semantics there. I have to consume the information, and I, as a human, then have to translate that information and then interact with some other machine and do that. And it requires a human. Web3 contemplates a world where semantics are defined so machines can talk to machines. One of, if not the most revolutionary implementations of that, are smart contracts and blockchains. Using smart contracts and blockchains, machines can talk to machines and actually make decisions. Machines can talk to machines and read information, and machines can talk to machines and write information in the tune of transactions. Those transactions write or modify Web3. And that is execution. So Web 1 is read only, Web 2 is read write, Web 3 is read write execute. Now, the reason we went through this very academic exercise is this. With every version of the web, the media, and especially marketing agencies and sales forces, always tried to reduce it down to one little thing and said, oh, well, Web 1 is website. You have a website. And then they said, instead of Web 2 and all of the power of Web 2, they said, you have a social media strategy. That was Web 2. What's your social media strategy? And then with Web 3, same thing's happening. Where's your NFT project? Where's your token? That's Web 3. Oh, you don't have MTs? Oh, you're not Web 3. Completely wrong. Just like you can have Web 2 and be incredibly productive without having the best social media strategy, because Web 2 is, of course, more than just social media. And Web 3 is vastly more than just non-fungible tokens. And so what is actually Web 3? Technically, it's RWX, read, write, execute. And it is the semantic web. It is the ability for machines to talk to machines in a trustless environment. And sometimes, not always, sometimes that's decentralized. And so that's another concept of saying, well, I've got to have my decentralized app. Where's my DApp? If you don't have your DApp, you're not Web 3. Contraire mon frere. That's one way you could. But Web 3 is merely the concept of being able to execute on the web.
Jeremy, why do you think though that Web 3.0, how do you see it creating value for business? Like if I'm a business, I got a loyalty program, it's free, it's easy to use. What makes Web 3.0 better? Like what is that?
Well, I hate to burst your bubble, Sam, but Web3 doesn't help you do any of those things better. And so for all of you out there who tuned in here to think that I was going to give you something.
Welcome to reality.
The reality is that Web3 does not help almost everybody of what you're doing right now. It helps almost nothing. Almost everything that you're doing right now, from your loyalty program to your promotions, to your influencer marketing, to your guerrilla marketing, to your social media strategy, to your e-commerce play, to your media sponsorships, to your co-marketing, to your, there's all kinds of amazing things that companies are doing right now with respect to collabs and experience, things of that nature. None of that requires Web3. Those are all just creative executions of Web 0, which is no web, Web 1, and Web 2. Web 3, what Web 3 does is opens up new concepts for you that can be leveraged in a metaverse. They absolutely don't need a metaverse. That can be leveraged with dApps, but absolutely don't need decentralized applications.
Yeah, that's super important. I think that, and not to go down like this rabbit hole super deep, but just to piggyback on that for a second, I have a lot of conversations in which people sort of just mush the metaverse or the concept of it. I still call it a conversation, right? And Web3 together, right? And although in my mind, at least, they're closely connected, these concepts, right? Like the metaverse and crypto and Web3, but I think that it's important to note that they're still two separate things today, right? They are, and crypto could make the metaverse better, right? Through interoperability, various platforms and virtual worlds, right? But it's not even a necessary ingredient per se of the metaverse, right? And that kind of, I think that doubles down on your point, right? I think it's important to separate those two things.
Without a doubt. In technically speaking, the metaverse and actually technically speaking, the concept of digital asset ownership, which could be considered to be NFTs as long as they're centralized, is actually a form of Web 2. And
100%.
The concept of badges, concept of levels, the concept of loyalty points, all the concept of play to earn, those are all Web 2 concepts. In fact, the metaverse or any VR environment is actually a Web 2 concept. There's no difference between that and a web page other than the technology by which you view that experience. What makes the metaverse Web 3 is when you have the semantic web, when you have the machine-to-machine communications, when you have the machine-to-machine execution and learning, and when you have this concept of digital ownership versus I have a score that is owned by Sturgis, and Sturgis controls everything about it, such as your frequent flyer program or whatever it might be. That you don't own that. You don't own those points. It's just a measuring stick of your loyalty. Web3, transforming that to digital ownership, that's where Web3 and the metaverse could overlap.
Yeah, and Jeremy, I think it's also about co-creation though, right? So, if you're a luxury brand's creative director, you're coming up with all these ideas, that's very kind of a push to a consumer base, right? I think Web 3.0, helps orchestrate relationships and allows people that are into a brand, to have more of a collaborative relationship with the brand. And then I think the Web 3.0 component then also can possibly provide the incentive for people to, collaborate together as a group.
Yep.
That's the part I find really cool.
So
yeah, me too.
Yeah, Sam's bringing up probably one of the most tangible current aspects of Web3. And so brilliantly stated, Sam's talking about creators and the relationship with creators. And to create a little teaser, I do have a 5-point strategy for those of you who are lifestyle brands or listening who want or are building a lifestyle brand. I do have a 5-point strategy, and Sam has brought up the number one point on that strategy, and that is creators. One of the things that a semantic web does is that it increases the power to the creators. In the current Web 2, the creators are actually using a centralized platform. And then only because of the huge benefit that they create to that centralized platform can they then tangentially get their own business development efforts to create sponsorships and brand campaigns and influencer marketing placements and things of that nature. But they don't participate in the upside, the valuation, and largely, at least, the revenues of that centralized platform. The Web3 changes all of that, not only from the trustless environment of being able to connect, or again, semantic, execute, being able to execute modules, codes, being able to create transactions and ownership on the Web3. Creators are given more power along those lines. And so that's a huge part of Web3, is this completely new understanding and treatment of creators. So we talked briefly a little bit about 15 minutes ago about Web3 doesn't necessarily, at least not from a disruptive perspective, change or benefit what you're currently doing now. It's a great question by Sam brought up. It's the new things that brands, especially lifestyle brands, will do, think of, create, dream up, that will really take advantage of Web3. The first of which is this wholehearted new embrace of creators, giving creators more power through this semantic web, having tools that they can use in a trustless way. Well, trustless, what does that mean? Well, I don't need your permission to be a maven. I don't need your permission to create on behalf of your brand. And so, can you imagine Louis Vuitton, one of the very most guarded of the fashion brands? It's so guarded that you cannot find a discount anywhere on the planet for Louis Vuitton unless it's fake, or unless they're against the retail terms of use of Louis Vuitton. Why is that? Well, it's because it's one of the most centralized brands on the planet. Can you imagine if they allowed creators to modify their e-commerce stores, their websites, their brand marketing, and things of that nature? Just not even thinkable. But some brands will take that leap of faith and they will embrace creators. And that is one of the biggest opportunities in the near term, at least, for lifestyle brands in Web3. So great question, Sam. What can brands do? I'll wrap up with this on the lecture part of today, and we'll get into some questions here that have come in. So teased it earlier. What are some ideas? The opinions and views expressed from this point forward are not sanctioned by Ocavu. They are purely Jeremy Huit's opinion. So take them as you will. Throw them away if you want.
This is where the fun starts.
I'm a Fibonacci guy, so everything is either 3 or 5. So here are the 5 strategies or 5 tactics or 5 things to write down on yellow sticky notes if you are a lifestyle brand, building a lifestyle brand, or want to be a lifestyle brand. Number 1, dive into your community and talk to your mavens and creators. Dive into your community. Get in there. These are the people. Don't dive into your community and talk to somebody who just bought one item or doesn't know too much about it. Talk to your mavens and your creators. It's the number one thing that you need to do. Those people, those mavens / creators, are going to be absolutely essential in a trustless or decentralized web, in Web3. So the first thing, dive into your community, talk to the mavens and the creators. Number 2, is you need to appoint an owner. I've given several webinars on Web3 and related topics. One of the most important things, unfortunately, I am old enough to have been through all three webs, and each one of them was exactly this point was the same advice on all of them. And very rarely do brands or companies or individuals or organizations do this. They always try to shoehorn Web 1, Web 2, or now Web 3 into an existing department. Well, you know, Web 2 that's a marketing thing, or Web 3, that's a R&D thing. It needs to CTO. That's great. Absolutely, you got to have tactical people, you got to have frontline people, but you need to have an owner. It doesn't matter where it is. If it comes out of tech team, that's great. If it comes out of the CXO suite, that's great. If it comes out of marketing, it's great. If it comes out of HR, who cares? Somebody has to be an owner of that. The reason they have to be an owner is they need to live, breathe, and sleep Web3. If you don't have somebody out there on Discord, if you don't have somebody out there banging around on every play to earn game, learning, what is this? If you don't have anybody on Steppen or Flowell with the app, looking at that, obviously, who cares whether or not they have fun with it, or who cares whether or not they like, blockchain tracking of their health statistics. They're going to learn, what are people doing? How are they thinking about it? What's the difference between Ponzi-nomics, tokenomics, and real economics? By the way, that's a whole different AMA. But if you don't have people who have ownership, you're not going to have that in-depth understanding and learning in your organization or brand, and you're going to miss out. You're going to be part of the herd. We call them lemmings. The third thing is learn the full true Web3. Do not be the conference room expert. Or I said that wrong. Do not be the conference expert. So Sam and I were talking about this earlier. We have this slang term, the conference expert, or the Wired magazine expert. And that's the person who reads Wired magazine, a particular article, or goes to a particular industry vertical, industry select conference. And immediately following that conference, they are now an expert. And that's only because every single expo booth and every single general session gave only the core messaging. So they got, if you go to one of these industry conferences, you get 3 days, 4 days, 5 days of pure, unadulterated core messaging. Of course, you're going to feel like you are an expert. You've got the distilled essence of almost every concept in that industry vertical. Don't be a conference expert. Learn the full. Conference expert would be in Web3 is someone who says Web3 equals NFTs. Web3 equals metaverse. Web3 equals cryptocurrency. Sure, maybe, but that's not really what Web3 is. Web3, of course, is about the semantic web. We talked about that, about trustless environments. We talked about that. We talked about execution and smart contracts. We talked about that. We talked about decentralization, et cetera, et cetera. What is it really about? What that really means for brands is, we talked about it, creators, engagement, creating assets out of concepts such as loyalty and those different types of things, rewarding that type of behavior, and then allowing apps and integrations across the board to take advantage of that in a trustless way. In other words, they don't need your permission. I don't need to call up Sturgis and say, hey, I'd like to do a co-marketing agreement. We'd like to do a collab with you. And then Sturgis says, okay, let me talk to my team. And then 6 months later, they say, okay, we're ready to start the collab. And then 6 months later, they do the collab. That's great. That's fun. But, man, there's a lot of friction in that. What if it was a trustless environment and we had read, write, execute in a Web3 scenario, and Sturgis merely publishes his Web3 smart contract, and then anybody then can interact with his brand, and whatever the rewards are. If you're Flowell, your lifestyle brand is about living to earn. Live to earn is Flowell's model. and it connects directly with Apple's Health Kit and Android's Health Kit. And that then through the Flowwell app, only because it's still in effectively beta, but technically speaking, it's trustless, and anybody could then reward healthy living with the Flowwell token, trustless, as well as interact with the Flowwell smart contracts, trustless. And so Flowwell has now created a community based on healthy living. Anybody can interact with that. And that is just a brilliant example of Web3 and lifestyle brands. I actually like it better than the other, the more common one I've heard so many times, which is Steppen. And that's a step to earn. Yeah, there's a fundamental flaw in Steppen, in my opinion. This is only my opinion. If you want to debate me, I would love for you to reply in the comments and post your opposition to this. But I believe that Steppen is an example of Ponzi-nomics. So remember, we talked about the future AMA on Ponzi-nomic, tokenomics, and real economics. Steppen's entire company right now is fabulous, and it probably will be for a number of years, but it is predicated on the concept of continuously or infinitely growing user base. And so the instant that that user base stops growing, well, it can never grow, they're so small, that's what Netflix said. And for the first time in whatever it was, 20 years, Netflix had a reduction in growth. It's crazy. Their stock price has tanked. So everything, what goes up must come down no matter how long it goes up. But you need to learn the full aspects of truly what Web3 is. And then the fourth is, again, just opinion. If I was a lifestyle brand, building a lifestyle brand, or wanted to become a lifestyle brand, I would try to embrace the concept of evolve, not grow. And it's specifically because of the brilliant question that Samuel just asked us. How can Web3 help me with what I'm doing right now? Probably can't. Meaningfully, obviously, if you do a brilliant marketing campaign, you'll get some buzz out of that. And if you have an equally brilliant PR company, you can probably get some pub out of that. And so it will benefit you in a flash in the pan concept. But just growing your current loyalty program, growing your current brand, growing your current lifestyle brand, growing your current influencer marketing campaigns, growing your current campaigns in general with Web3 technology may or may not have any impact at all. I'm guessing that it's a coin flip. Probably don't want to bet the ranch on a coin flip. Evolve, not grow. Don't grow, evolve. What does evolve mean? What's the difference between evolve and grow? Well, both of them are growing, but one of them is changing. And so quantum leaps instead of, shifts, growing, those different types of things. And so evolve, not grow is kind of the fourth strategy for lifestyle brands as you embrace Web3. And then the final one is very controversial. I can't believe that I'm saying this because it is against almost everything that I've ever said, coached, talked about. I've given seminars on almost the exact opposite ethos, but the fifth with respect to Web3 and lifestyle brands is go small or go home. What that means is don't bet the ranch. So when Web 1 came out, there were really only two camps. It was so strange. So you would go in and you would think that there'd be this spectrum of, well, you're going to get 10% of the people that hate it, 20% of the people that are interested, and the next decile would be people that want to know more, and the next decile would be people that want a proposal, the next decile, all the way up to the top decile, which are people who are enthusiasts and brand ambassadors and early adopters. But that wasn't the case. You had only two camps. You had one, no way, no day. This is the stupidest thing ever. Why am I going to dial up to see a really bad version of my gorgeous glossy brochure? That's heresy. And it's also bad brand management. And then you had the other side that said, oh my goodness, this is the best thing ever. This is the second coming, et cetera, et cetera. the internet is going to take over the planet. You basically only had two camps. And so neither of them were right. Neither one of them were right? Of course, because the people that said, the internet is ridiculous, they were, of course, colossally wrong. And then the people that said it was the best thing since sliced bread were wrong because they're too early. In fact, they were 5 years too early. And so neither one of them were right. And that's what go small or go home is. Go small or go home is a way of thinking. It is do as much as you want, but don't put a lot of effort into it. You don't need a lot of effort to do this. Most people don't realize to launch your own token, you can do that in probably 15 minutes if you go onto certain websites. You can have your own cryptocurrency. Did you know that? You go out and play with things. I'm not talking about creating a meaningless intern project for your brand or for your corporation and things of that nature. I'm talking about meaningful people in your organization doing a meaningful project, but make it small. Go small. Just try it out. No pressure. Don't launch a PR campaign. I apologize to all the PR companies out there listening, but don't overdo it. Just try a bunch of things that are small and have fun with it. Don't put a lot of pressure. Don't make it part of your PPP evaluation. Oh my goodness. Come on, guys. Yeah. Experiment, have fun, go small or go home. Don't go big. Don't say, okay, I am going to be the king of all Web3, and I am going to make my career on this Web3 project at my lifestyle brand, blah, 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 blah. No. Focus on your lifestyle brand and what's working, and do smart business, smart marketing, smart branding, and then just try some things. Learn what works. Fail 100 times. Lou Gerstner, his infamous line, of course, in I think it was 1997 shareholder meeting, he said, our goal for next year is to double our failures. Of course, everybody gasps as a shareholder. Oh my goodness, IBM is going to double their failures. Of course, what he meant is that experimentation and innovation and exploration was going to quadruple, quintuple, 10x. And because they were going to learn so much, they were going to have double the failures. And that's the same concept of go small or go home. As you go into Web3, realize it is very, very early in Web3. Oh my goodness. I can talk to 5 people. I can talk to 5 people that are experts.
Yeah.
And they will all give you 5 different definitions of what Web3 is, how Web3 should be implemented, and what the best Web3 strategy is. That is a sure sign of an immature market. And so go small or go home. Dive into your community, talk to your mavens and to your creators. Appoint an owner. It doesn't have to be their full-time job. You don't have to write a job description, but somebody needs to be an owner. Somebody needs to go out there, and I don't care whether you're 20 years old, 40 years old, or 60-year-old, you need to get out onto the play-to-earn apps and the play-to-earn websites and the play-to-earn people, and you need to own Web3. You need to learn the full spectrum of what Web3 means. What does a semantic web means? What does RWX mean? What you need to evolve, not grow. All the people, so then you're saying, hold a second, should we not grow? Of course you should grow, but that's not what your Web3 initiative should be. If you're growing, your existing campaigns should then learn what's the Web3 component, what do we want to do there. If you're just wanting to do nuanced shifts, then all of your existing campaigns, just as new technology and concepts come along, they should adopt those. That's what they should be doing. But it shouldn't be this new Web3 thing. That should be different. So don't say, okay, how can we take our brilliantly designed loyalty program and make it Web3? That's silly. There's no benefit there. If it's working, obviously if it's not working, then maybe you should. But if it's working great, Web3 is not going to make it significantly meaningfully better unless you do a quantum leap with it. And then, of course, the 5th one, the controversial strategy, is go small or go home. Right?
Yeah. That I think I mean I'm with you, man, because I think that one of the, when I have conversations with clients and you know, discussing what they should do in this, you know, for me, I'm often talking about the metaverse, right? And I'm also talking about how to experiment, right, in this space, in this kind of convergence of two dimensions, which is really what we mean, or what I mean when we say the metaverse, right? The convergence of this physical and digital space. And some people call that the metaverse, right? But in my mind, it's less about sort of leaping headfirst into these virtual worlds, right? And more about being able to create, you know, meaningful experiences, back to our original sort of preface around brand, right? Like meaningful experiences within that convergence space, right? Being able to deliver more creative and playful worlds and experiences by kind of harmonizing these two online and physical lives that we have now. And I think that you know, the sort of idea behind STEPN is interesting because of that, right? There's other companies that have evolved out of that space, and I agree with you, by the way, around your premise on STEPN. But you know, the location-based gamified commerce experience,
Yep.
right, is powerful, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we're going to see, and we're, you know, we're lucky enough to be powering some of that stuff at Ocavu, but, you know, being able to experiment in that space in small ways is something I would also highly recommend, because it is, I think, really going to change how we think about consumer experiences, right?
Yep.
You know, it's gonna, I think, move beyond collecting and sort of NFTs and all that stuff. And it's really gonna become being able to feel more like a game when you walk around the city and sort of rub up against the culture that you live in, right? Which is powerful for brands to experiment with in all kinds of different ways. And I think small.
You know, I often go to the Gucci experiment. Gucci is probably one of the first, they're almost, if not the OG of fashion brand Web3 plays. A lot of people would call them the best example of Web3 in fashion. I think they're a great example, but I will tell you,
early in a lot of the tech too, like very daring and early.
Early in a lot of tech. I will tell you that they only are using the NFT ownership component of Web3, and what they're missing is the creator part. And so Gucci's success is 100% reliant on Gucci. What Web3 says with read, write, execute is that my success is a force multiplier. As I build the foundation, the tenets of my lifestyle brand, Patagonia, Red Bull, I have mavens and creators that live, that embody that lifestyle brand. They then are a force multiplier for that. And that is the true promise of Web3. And that is what Web3 provides. And that is what Ocavu is trying to do, is that true promise of bringing creators into that and having them be this force multiplier for brands. And that's a fundamental difference. And it's also, you know, of course, you know, pitching my own book, but that's fundamental for Ocavu versus anybody else who says, I am the Shopify of OpenSea. Well, that's great. We do that too, but we're focused more. I mean, that's kind of table stakes for us. We're focused more on how do we get that force multiplier. You make great products and services. You have built a great brand, and you potentially are building a lifestyle brand. How do we create a force multiplier on that? Well, you have to have a trustless concept, this read, write, execute, and the execute being the empowerment of creators. bring those into the brand strategy, bring those into the marketing plan. They don't have to be physically brought into your Zoom conferences here now, let me tell you, but having them as a strategic part of your plan is part of the promise of Web3, and it's so exciting. Something that Ocavu is squarely focused on, this true full breadth of Web3 and its impact on not only lifestyle brands, but all brands. So I believe that we're almost running up on time. So thank you so much. We had about 10 questions come in, and I believe we answered all of them. But if we didn't, please comment on Twitter, Discord, or whatever the comment section of this posting is, and we will try to expound or at least give some type of lip service to any additional questions that you have for this AMA Web3 for lifestyle brands.
Thanks for hosting, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy. This is fun.